In 1992, conservation biologist John McKinnon traveled to the Vu Quang Nature Reserve, a dense patch of humid forest in central Vietnam. There, he met with Vietnamese zoologist Zhao Tuoc. He had been talking with local hunters and had uncovered something that astounded the both of them: a small bovine skull with a pair of long, slender horns. Both scientists knew right away that they had discovered something unique. The two had discovered the Saola, the first new large land mammal to be discovered in over 50 years. This was not the final fruit that this fertile, unexplored land would yield to scientists. Fish, birds, and other larger mammals would soon be uncovered in the land that would become known as Vietnam's Lost World. Before we go on, I want to warn that, as a sentient piece of white bread, I'll probably mispronounce a lot of the Vietnamese names. I'll do my best, but please forgive me. Anyways, in the center of Vietnam, running against the border of Laos, lies the Vu Quang Nature Reserve, in which is found a thick and humid forest. Its terrain is steep and nearly impossible for even locals to traverse. Entering the forest is entering a treacherously hot and leech-filled world, its rocks slippery with algae and drenched from seemingly endless rain. The area was originally reserved as a memorial for a Vietnamese insurgent who fought against 19th century French colonization, and was eventually expanded into a 150,000-acre nature reserve to protect its biodiversity against hunting and logging. The nearby towns and villages were, at the time of McKinnon's visit, either small hunting and farming communities or military camps. Author Elizabeth Kempf, who visited Vietnam a few years earlier, later described similar areas to the south as littered with piles of scrap metal from tanks and bomb casings. The late 80s and early 90s saw Vietnam begin a concerted effort to improve its international relations after a period of severe economic downturn and political unrest. The World Wildlife Foundation only began to examine the wildlife of Vietnam in 1985, which means by the time McKinnon arrived in 1992, much of the country's dense forests and unpopulated mountains had been untouched by science. This would be the time of the first major discoveries of a country that would, in coming years, yield many fresh and exciting discoveries of new wildlife. The first major discovery of the area was the Saola, also known as the spindlehorn, the Vu Quang ox, or the Asian unicorn. Zhao Tuoc discovered the skull of this animal in 1992 as a trophy of local hunters. This discovery was confirmed by visiting biologist John McKinnon. In 1994, a calf of the species was captured alive. It was described as having distinctive white markings on its face and hoofs, large eyes, a short, fluffy tail, and a thin, dark brown stripe running down its back. The species is most known for its pair of long, slender horns with subtle spindles, and it's said that the horn's resemblance to a type of loom used by locals is how it got the name Saola. The Saola was the first large land mammal to be described since 1939, when scientists were first able to examine the cowpri, a tall bovine species discovered in Southeast Asia. The sensational nature of the spindlehorn's discovery opened the door for future discoveries in the area, such as the giant muntjac, which we'll look at soon. Sadly, discoveries like this usually have a dark side, and the announcement of a rare animal sought after by science is bound to get the attention of poachers, already a problem in the area at the time. Danish journalist Freddy Wolf traveled to the Vu Quang Reserve and announced a cash reward for a captured specimen. He got one, but, according to McKinnon, the captured Saola was already dead and in the process of being eaten by the time Wolf arrived. The Saola is listed as critically endangered by the IUCN due to continued dangers from local hunters, poachers, and its generally limited area of habitation. Even now, 30 years later, a Saola has never been seen by researchers in the wild, only as captured animals, remains of hunts, or in rare photographs from camera traps. Its most recent photograph was in 2013, a full 15 years since its last appearance. The second major discovery from the Vuquang Nature Reserve is the giant muntjac deer, the largest species of muntjac, which are normally small critters notable for their tusks and their dog-like bark. This species was discovered in 1994 by survey teams from the Wildlife Conservation Society, who first found evidence of it in January in the form of unusually large antlers held by villagers near the nature reserve. By March, a male of the species was captured live. The animal is similar to its smaller relatives. It has simple, round-tipped antlers, pronounced tusks on males, and a grayish-brown coat of fur. Much like the Sayola, live sightings of the giant muntjac are incredibly rare. Glimpses of the creature have been spotted through camera traps, which are motion-detecting cameras meant to photograph animals harmlessly and remotely. One was photographed in Vietnam in 2017, and another in Cambodia in late 2022. Again, much like the Sayola, the giant muntjac is critically endangered due to hunting and the steady deterioration of its natural ecosystem by human expansion. As Vietnam continued to open itself to the world and to the scientific community, more discoveries would be made, primarily within the tropical forest upon the steep, often inaccessible slopes of the Annamite Mountains, which run hundreds of miles down the border between Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. An early and adorable example is the Annamite striped rabbit, first discovered in early 1996 in a Laotian food market, and only first photographed in the wild in 2015. It's a short-eared rabbit with bold, distinct, black stripes decorating its tan body. Not much is known about this creature, though, much like me after college, it's known to be nocturnal and solitary. Sightings are rare and spread out across the Annamite mountain range. One 2005 discovery in central Laos unveiled a fluffy, squirrel-like rodent thought to have been extinct for 11 million years, the Laotian rock rat, a species of gray rodents with furred tails which live on limestone outcroppings. In comparing the bones of this creature to fossil remains of other rodents, this species is said to be the last remaining relative of a line of rodents thought to be extinct, which earned this species the zoological honor of being titled a living fossil. Since its discovery, which included video footage of the rodent out in the wild, several more specimens have been discovered in local wildlife markets, which implies this species, rarely seen by science until 2005, is not actually that rare at all. The subcontinent also saw the discovery of new birds during this period, along with many more sightings of threatened and endangered birds. One bird, the limestone leaf warbler, had actually been first spotted in 1994 in Vietnam, but was misidentified as another bird, only to be fully recognized and named in 2008. It's a small, yellow and black friend that gets its namesake from the limestone karst it calls home. This is a fun example of a creature that is actually quite common and easy to find in its area, but one that was just overlooked by science for many years. Another bird went a whole 74 years between sightings. The sooty babbler, a dark brown cupcake of a bird, first seen in a collection of specimens collected in Laos in 1920. It wasn't until 1994 that more were sighted in Vietnam. Of course, there's more to nature than mammals and birds. Numerous fish were discovered in the area, but reports on such things are much harder to find. More on that later. For now, please gaze upon the proud and handsome face of the elephant ear gourami, discovered in 1994 in the Cone Falls, the largest waterfalls in southern Asia. These fish have fantastic rows of little sharp teeth, very kissable. Botanists haven't been shy about trekking into the Vietnamese jungles either. In the late 90s, dozens of new plants were discovered by researchers, including yet another type of living fossil, the ancient-looking cycads. In the following years, 50 new species of ferns alone were found in the area. Amusing to think about how many new species of plants McKinnon and his crew trampled past without taking note, simply because they weren't botanists. In 2020, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, that's what the World Wildlife Fund is called now, released an exciting report. 224 new species of mammals, reptiles, amphibians, fish, and plants have been discovered in the greater Mekong area in 2020 alone. This report also discovered the fun fact that since 1997, over 3,000 new species have been discovered in the area. This report highlights the vast abundance of undiscovered biodiversity in this and many areas of the world. A biodiversity that includes large discoveries like the Popa langur, a newly discovered species of primate found in Myanmar that year. To keep our focus just on Vietnam, in 2020, 91 new species were discovered in the area. This included, as highlighted by the WWF in their report, some lovely new frogs like the vibrant orange Mount Ki Kwai San horned frog and the sandy, pointy-snouted gracile frilled tree frog. Vietnam was also found to be home of Zug's odd-scaled snake, a shiny and dark example of a rare type of snake whose scales don't overlap. This snake was apparently discovered just in the middle of the road somewhere in Vietnam. Up in the evergreen forests of the Vietnamese Central Highlands was discovered a new species of horned dragon, a green and brown mottled lizard friend. This is just a sample of the 91 species found in Vietnam just in 2020, a tiny glimpse into the richness of this lost world. The rareness of these creatures, some of whom were only identified by 1 or 2 samples, also emphasizes the ever-present risk to the livelihood of creatures in the areas like this. In the face of climate change and deforestation, most of the creatures discovered will likely be placed on IUCN's threatened or endangered lists. Zoology can be an inexact science, since many creatures are first discovered by either their bones or by their pelts. Exact identification can be extremely difficult when an animal can't be seen or captured in the wild. This can lead to many animals being confused for others, and some samples being falsely assumed to be a new creature. All this is made worse by purposeful forgeries and hoaxes created for the poaching market. Such things are common concerns for zoologists and cryptozoologists, and the jungles of Vietnam are no stranger to these issues. The first example of this among the Vietnamese discoveries was first heralded as the 3rd major discovery of the area. Around the time as the discoveries of the Saola and the giant muntjac deer, Vietnamese biologist Nguyen Ngoc Chinh discovered the skull of a 3rd unknown animal among the collection of local hunters. This animal would become known as the Quang Kem, or slow-running deer, and was noted for its pair of short, sharp, unpronged horns. This alleged discovery went almost entirely undocumented after the initial reports of its discovery. No sightings, no photographs, and no bodies caught by hunters. John McKinnon claimed in 2001 that bones of the slow-running deer had been unknowingly held in the Hanoi Institute of Ecology and Biological Resources, unsorted and unexamined since the 1960s, but that no real study of its genetics had been done. Stories of the Quang Kem were passed around in various cryptozoological circles for years. It was only in 2020 that zoologist Carl Schucker claimed to solve the mystery. On a blog post, he claims that a Fergus Blair interviewed John McKinnon regarding the Quang Kem, where it was revealed that the bones held in the Hanoi Institute had actually been identified as that of the sambar deer, a much more well-known and better documented deer species native to the Indian subcontinent. Furthermore, the blog post paraphrases McKinnon as saying he found skulls of the supposed Quang Kem in a monastery in Bhutan, and that, to the locals, the slow-running deer and the sambar deer were one and the same. This is not a concise scientific report, but Schucker is a well-respected zoologist, so it's reasonable to now think that the alleged 3rd major discovery of the Vu Quang Reserve may have been a case of mistaken identity. Such is the nature of breaking wildlife news. Indeed, Jeff Wise's 1994 article, which I cited before, mentioned the double-banded Argus pheasant, known only from a single feather in a zoological collection. By 2012, this animal had received not a single other trace of evidence, and was removed from the IUCN's database of animals entirely, with the scientific community seemingly declaring the single feather as a simple genetic aberration of the great Argus. There is also the Kaiting Vor, an animal reported to be discovered in 1994 through its distinct curved horns with noted curves and ridges. Local legends allegedly claimed that this cow-like creature is a snake-eating predator. It was billed as the last large mammal discovered in the 20th century, received a scientific name Pseudonovibospiralis, and there was a proposal to add it to the IUCN's Red List of threatened species. However, years passed after the initial alleged discovery of the horns, and much like the Quang Kem or the double-banded Argus pheasant, no new evidence appeared. Further cementing this animal's fate as just a myth or accidental hoax was the work of the Zoological Society of Paris, who, as reported in 2002, tested several reported horns of the Kiteng Vor and found them all to be just normal cow horns, purposefully twisted into distinct, curved shapes. Hoaxes and mistakes aside, there is also the frustrating category of animals that seem to have simply slipped through the cracks of either research or reporting. Many animals have been hinted at alongside the more sensational discoveries of larger mammals, going unnamed and never mentioned again. This could be due to simply not being seen again after their initial sighting, their discovery not hitting the mainstream flow of news, or their sighting being a case of mistaken identity of an already known species. Jeff Wise's 1994 article about the Saola, for example, mentions a new species of carp and a new subspecies of sunbird, and hints at a possibly undiscovered purple beetle. Another New York Times article from that year mentions a new species of fish, 2 previously unknown bird species, and an unknown tortoise with a striking yellow shell. I, personally, was not able to find anything further about any of these new discoveries, which means if they were named and described to news outlets, the road to identifying them is a narrow one. Compared to adorable rabbits and new types of deer, some animals simply cannot compete for media attention. In 1996, Michael Richardson lamented the lack of reporting on anything that isn't a large mammal, as he reported on the many different species of new fish discovered in the South Asian region since 1991. He quotes Tyson Roberts, our Bangkok research friend who discovered the new fish in the Cone Falls, as saying, "The hierarchy of public excitement about zoological discoveries goes something like this. Dinosaurs are number 1, followed by mammals or birds, and then anything else is way, way down. Fishes are the least well known. Poor arthropods don't even get a cursory mention." If you follow any news of the natural world at all, ever, then you can already guess the status of the jungles of the Vu Quang Reserve, Vietnam, and the greater Mekong area. Climate change is provably in the process of greatly disrupting the ecosystems of the area in many ways. Rising temperatures, climbing sea levels, and more extreme and variable weather patterns, especially dangerous in areas prone to monsoons, all threaten the livelihood of all the animals we've discussed here, and all the animals still undiscovered, and the humans that call this area home. This exacerbates the problem we humans more directly cause by deforestation. Many of the animals we've met in this video were already rare and endangered by the time of their discovery, and given the rarity of their sightings for some of them in recent years, extinction may well loom on the horizon, if it has not already arrived while we weren't looking. The Vietnamese scientific community, for their part, are not sleeping on these issues, and are doing what they can to survey and protect the wildlife of the area. In working with the Center for Biodiversity Conservation, they continue to develop the infrastructure necessary to monitor and protect the wildlife of Vietnam. Regarding the Vu Quang region specifically, if one compares the discovery of that area to that of similar areas nearby, its status as a lost world actually begins to feel hollow, as if overinflated by the initial handful of large mammals discovered there in the 90s. A 2001 report by J.C. Eames for Bird Conservation International did not even suggest the elevation of the specific area above nearby, similar areas for conservation. This is not to devalue the area, or the discoveries within, of course. But when a specific area or species gets placed on the pedestal of pop science news, it's important to remember that the scientific view can sometimes be relatively narrow compared to the actual scope of nature. In some ways, the world is about as big as you think it is. As a human species, we know the size of it, we've mapped it out, and we've set foot on most, if not all, its landmasses. Barring any undiscovered sunken continents or subterranean biomes, we generally know how much Earth there is. But all that Earth is much more dense than you may realize. Our world's forests are thicker than they appear. Its caves are much deeper, and its ravines and oceanic trenches are more abyssal than can be imagined. For a single jungle to hold entirely unseen creatures as big as a deer until as late as the 1990s should surely lead one's imagination to wonder what else could remain undiscovered. What lurks in the vast unpopulated forests? What may lay buried beneath sheets of ice or snow in the Antarctic? What animals, their size able to rival that of the giant squid or the largest whales, stay quietly hidden in the black depths of the ocean? Is it any wonder, then, that I first heard about the Vu Quang Reserve in Coleman and Clark's 1999 book, Cryptozoology A to Z? Finding so-called lost worlds, where large creatures can still remain undescribed by science, is what cryptozoologists live for. It would be really reductive to say, oh, well, if a deer or giant squid can exist for so long without being seen, who's to say a bipedal ape or giant acid-spitting worm can't? Cryptozoology is, among other things, about being open-minded and ready for the possibility that there are always new discoveries to be made in nature, and that, sometimes, rumors and strange sightings might just have some roots in reality. Though, of course, when it comes to bipedal apes or acid-spitting worms, well, who's to say? I hope everyone's been well out there. Let me know in the comments how kissable you think the elephant ear gourami is, or just make fun of my Vietnamese pronunciation. Be sure to subscribe. If you all like this video, I've got more like it I hope to do in the future. Until I see you again, take care of yourself. The two had discovered the Saola. Saola? Oh my god.
Saola.
Saola.